tell you guys why texting affects formal writing in students. Or maybe not. So what is texting? Texting is a simplified version of traditional English. It is used to short messages to make them faster, originally used because text had to have a character limit of 160. That's back in the 90s when it was first created. And every 20 seconds, your cell phone would send out a signal to the cell towers to say, hey, I'm over here. I'm still on the network. And when it would send that signal, it would add the text into that signal, and that's how your text would get out. And it had to be so short, but they've changed it since then. And some people consider it its own language. I thought texting would be bad in formal writing. I chose this topic because I feel it affects my formal writing personally. And I did a lot of research on this topic and actually found no proof that actually texting affects formal writing. I was very surprised. More studies showed that it actually improved or meant you had good regular formal English in order to understand how texting language actually works. Research on this topic should be widely available because all the negative media about texting and students. And it was wrong. I found about 8 studies and they all said that texting is not bad for you. And these are 2 quotes are from this article I found. And the brevity of text style and the 160 character constraint of SMS requires the author to write economically, inventively, and playfully. Doing this is good practice when learning to read and write. So he's saying it's good practice to actually learn how to text in shortened words and be able to take words and make a cryptology out of them and being able to shorten words and expand words when you read them. They conclude that if our children are showing difficulties with reading and spelling, it would seem that is in spite of the contribution of textism use, not because of it. Negative media. Both teachers and parents have expressed concern about possible negative effects on texting and literacy skills. And that was from Fox News. This could be because texting resembles early forms of writing in kids. Kids are known to take letters and mix them up with other letters that sound like the same letters and whatnot. Taking words that sound like certain letters and changing them like R to R and U to the letter U. This is another quote. Vandals, this is about texting. Vandals who are doing to our language what Genghis Khan did to neighbors 800 years ago, pillaging our punctuation, savaging our sentences, and raping our vocabulary. Teachers and parents. Texting, written language resembles the early phonological stages of spelling, using letters that sound like other letters and shortening them. Early spellers typically omit vowels and use dominant sounds. This makes texting look like a regression back to early education in the eyes of teachers. If you see somebody using, words like that, it's what kids used when they were younger. So people think that you're still an elementary education level when in fact you're not. For a number of years, teachers and parents have blamed texting for 2 ills: corruption of language and the degradation of spelling in youth. And what is literacy? According to a Pew study, the digital age presents a paradox. While teenagers are writing more than ever through texts, IMs, emails, blogs, most do not think their electronic communication as real writing. A number of reasons exist for this, but one of which is the way they perceive literacy. Literacy today refers to more than reading and writing printed language. Kessler, Wood, and Joshi think of it as the ability to decode information in various orthographic formats, including digital media, to make meaning from it and to encode information into those formats to communicate other ideas to others. So taking sentences like be right back and changing it to BRB, you're just cryptifying the sentence into a different format that somebody can decryptify and read. But you'd have to understand what be right back and change it to BRB. You'd have to know the actual English to make sense of it. In formal writing, it has structures and rules that regulate it. kind of like our outline we had to do for this class. And it's used between people that are in education, email your teacher, formal writings at work when you send work emails. And people expect texting to infiltrate this writing, and you might use text lingo in your formal writing when it's not supposed to be that way. Informal writing is best known to us as texting. We use that between friends as casual conversation. Here's an example of some little casual conversation using text lingo. Taking bigger sentences and combining them into littler ones. These are some crazy examples and relations to real world applications. An 11th grade English teacher, Inez Brown, managed to marry texting and Shakespeare. She asked her learners to summarize in the form of SMS texting passages from Richard III to Succession, demonstrate their comprehension of the text. So she had her kids take Shakespeare and translate it into texting so they could understand it better. English professor says that it's not that there's never a place for this sort of thing, but the difference between how you would dress to go out on Saturday night versus how you dress when you do yard work. It's just you have to know when to use what. Just like if you know multiple languages, you might know Spanish and English or whatever. You have to know when to use what, and as long as you know when to use it, you're fine. Positive side of texting. Textisms are phonetic abbreviations, so they sound like the real thing, but they're not correctly spelled out. They're much shorter. Plisser, Wood, and Joshi argue that to produce and read such abbreviation requires in the texter a level of phonological awareness. So unless you know, you have to know what it means in regular English to be able to read the texted abbreviation of it. Incorrectly spelled, but phonologically acceptable in English. David Crystal, honorary professor of linguistics at the University of Wales, believes that sending frequent text can actually help children to read and write because of the abbreviations used. People have always used abbreviations. They do not actually use that many in text, but when they do, they're using them in new, playful, imaginative ways that benefit literacy. In my conclusion, texting can be used correctly as long as you understand formal language. If you have inadequate formal English language comprehension, you struggle more at understanding texting lingo. So if you know your English and you know your texting lingo, you're fine as long as you can distinguish between the two. But if you're bad at regular English, then you can confuse the two more easily. If a person understands the concept of audience, who they're speaking to or writing to, as opposed to thinking, oh, I can write my teacher this report using whatever kind of language I want, it's not going to work very well, but if you write it to your friend, you're fine. As long as you can distinguish between the two, you'll be fine. And this was a funny little example I found about mom not knowing what certain lingos mean. WTF, well, that's fantastic. And that's it.
For everyone.